Yes, it's starting now.
All right, we're not late,
Awesome.
it's still 7 o'clock, so we're all good. Huge welcome to everybody and thanking you for joining us on what's going to be our last webinar of this year. So our topic for this evening is transitions to school and how to support your child in transitioning to that new care or learning environment. So I am just going to share screen. So bear with me a second. Check with Sam. That looks good. Is that okay, Sam?
Yep.
Okay, so here we go. So, the most important thing we need to think about when we're transitioning our children into the school environment is waiting until they're ready. Because if a child starts school before they're ready, then they can have a negative feeling, a negative association around the school environment, which can lead to disengagement. So there's lots of research out there that waiting until children are prepared and ready for school can actually have a really positive impact on their whole school life, not just their first year of school. So most countries have a legal start school date or start school age. So in New Zealand, for example, children can start school at the age of 5, but legally they have to be in school by the age of 6. So that gives New Zealand parents an opportunity, a whole year to decide when their child is ready for school. So many of you on this call are home-based educators, so you'll have a good idea of whether a child is ready to start school or whether you might be suggesting to your parents they start school a little bit later. And that's what this webinar is about this evening, is how do we know when our children are ready to start school and how can we support them in that transition? So starting school can be very, very stressful for parents and for educators because we'll have many worries and concerns for our child. So we might be worried that will they make friends? Or what if my child is bullied? Or will he or she be happy? Will they be able to manage their behaviour? Because at home and in a familiar environment, then we see every aspect of our child, and that can be sometimes the what might be deemed as negative behaviours, but really they're just communications. You might be seeing tantrums, you might be seeing overwhelm, and you might then be thinking, well, how are they going to cope in the school environment? And then, of course, we all worry, will they do well academically? And there's many social pressures on parents and educators that will ignite those worries and really inflame those concerns. So we all have well-meaning other people, other adults, sometimes family, who will often compare that your child to other children they know or other children in the family or their friends and how well their friends' children are doing. So it's quite natural that people make comparisons, but it can be add a whole layer of stress because then you're thinking, well, if my child can't read before they start school, then they're going to be behind all the other children. So I think we need to try not to worry about what other people think and not compare our child to other children because all children learn at their own rate and it's never the same. No two children are the same. We are unique, perfectly imperfect individuals, so making comparisons is just futile. What's the point? Nobody feels good in that situation, so we should not do it. Feeling also another stress is feeling our child, like I say, might not be able to read or they might not know their numbers or they might not be able to write their name and all these skills that we think that children should be able to do before they start school. It can put pressure on us as parents and educators if they're not able to do that, and therefore it causes more stress for us. Other people boasting about their child's academic achievements. And you might be thinking, well, my child can't do that. And you might worry that they won't do as well in school. Know that under 7, a child's ability to read and write has no bearing on their academic achievements later in life. So again, every child learns at a different rate, and we all should be treated, learning should be personalised, and we shouldn't compare them to other children. And also feeling that our child might not be in the same class as their friends. We hear this a lot in the early childhood sector. Well, I've chosen this school because their friends are going there. And what we see all the time is that actually, when they start school, children will often make a whole different friendship group. And will often it doesn't involve the children they knew in early childhood. Sometimes it does. I'm not saying that's always the case, but it's often the case that they make a whole new friendship group when they start school anyway. So let's have a look at the 3 most important skills for school readiness. So we have here and what it means to be ready for school. So the 3 most important skills are being able to manage myself, manage my own belongings, and be able to dress myself, to be able to do things like manage my lunchbox, tie my own laces. My actual tip is not to have laces for many young children, because even if they can tie them, it often takes longer and they'll get impatient and want to go out and play. So Velcro shoes are a really good thing to do, to buy for preschool and new entrance children. The other thing that's really, really important is self-regulation, being able to understand and manage my own emotions, being able to manage my impulses and control my strong emotions. It's really, really important. And the third important skill is being able to communicate my needs and desires effectively, to be able to advocate for myself, because when they're in school, they don't have their early childhood teacher or educator with them, or their parents. So the more opportunities we can give them to practice independence and self-advocacy, the better we're preparing them for school. So we'll talk about some tips around how we do this as we get into the webinar. So when we're looking at being able to manage myself, for the school environment, it's really important they can dress themselves, that they can fasten their own shoes, and it doesn't have to be laces, like I said before, that we can look after our own belongings. So simple things like putting their pencil case back in their bag, knowing to hang their bag on their hook, which might have their name on it, etc., etc. And being able to manage my lunchbox as well. And of course, toileting independently is really, really important. And then when we're looking at self-regulation, it's about managing my impulses. You know, can I wait? Can I take turns? Can I listen and pay attention? Can I develop relationships? And again, managing my lunchbox, that's a biggie, because it can cause a lot of stress for children. And then looking at advocating for ourselves, can I speak up and ask for help? Can I say no if something doesn't feel right for me? If someone's saying something or doing something that I'm not comfortable with? And do I feel comfortable in asking questions and sharing ideas? So that's what we mean by self-advocacy. And of course, social skills play a big part in this too. Again, sharing and taking turns comes into this. Do I understand that I should use my words and not my fists if I need something? You know, not to just go and grab, but to ask. And can I play cooperatively? These are obviously skills that will help them in group learning situations, and of course in the school playground as well. So then what we would say, and there's much research out there to support this, in particular a Stanford University study that showed that children who started school at 6 rather than 5 had measurably better scores on tests of self-control by the time they were 7. Because it makes sense if you think about it, if they're learning self-control and they're learning to manage their own emotions in an environment where there's 1-to-1 or 1-to-3, it's much easier for them to learn that in that small group care rather than a classroom of what could be 1-to-20 or 1-to-30. So it's really important that being able to manage our emotions and control our behaviours, that's a really, really important skill. And if your child doesn't possess that, then maybe allow them to start school a little bit later, because that you're giving them the very best chance. They cannot learn if they're in a high stress state or if they're in fight or flight mode, because I think, as we've shared before, the amygdala, which is the fight or flight protection part of the brain, is in the middle of the brain, and our higher brain curves over the top of it. As soon as our amygdala engages in a stressed environment, our higher brain disengages, because we're then in fight or flight. Well, that's not a learning state. We need our children to feel calm and in control of their emotions, and then we can engage their thinking brain, which is the higher brain. So if you think about it, this study from Stanford University makes a lot of sense. So starting school is not a race. Children who start school later can often do better academically than those who start really young. And I'm not saying it's a one size fits all. That does not apply to every child. Children who have the ability to self-regulate and have good social skills, of course they're going to be ready to start school at a younger age. But everybody is different, so we should be treating them as such and let them start when they're ready. So then the big question for many parents is, what about reading and writing? So some parents believe, and will often put pressure on educators as well, to be teaching them to read and write, because they need to be able to do that before they start school. Because often the belief is, if they start school being able to read and write, then the street's ahead of every other child, and they're going to do really well. And there's much research out there that proves actually the opposite. Children will learn to read at their own pace, and they'll learn to read when all those other things fall into place and when they're ready to. Reading early doesn't mean reading better. The most important thing is that children develop a love of reading and a love of books, and the way they do that is by enjoying books and learning to read at their own pace, so it's an enjoyable experience. As soon as we put pressure on children to be able to develop that skill early, then we're going to turn them off reading, and that can have a really negative impact on learning. But it is important that we teach them the whole pre-reading and writing skills. So they are things like enjoying books, knowing that reading is fun, understanding that we turn pages from left to right, understanding that words and symbols have meaning. So pointing at letters, identifying words, all those little things are really good pre-reading skills. Being able to count to 10, or knowing my alphabet or some of my alphabet. You know, the alphabet song is a great way to learn that. Recognizing and maybe even being able to write their own name, or recognizing the first letter of the name. So they have an understanding that words and symbols have meaning. But holding a pencil correctly is really important as well. Habits formed in early childhood can last a lifetime, and being able to hold a pencil correctly actually supports children in being able to handwrite. And I mean, my writing's terrible, and I can hold a pencil correctly as well. But, you know, it really sets them up for success if they can hold a pencil properly and they know how to use scissors. So lots of things you can do to help develop their fine motor skills is developing the pincer grip. Having pens and pencils around for children to use whenever they want, and often, and picking things up using the pincer grip. So shape sorting, or sorting out, you know, small items, so they have lots of opportunity, like I say, to use that grip, excuse me. So if we're looking at preparing your child for school, how can we support them, and how can we ensure they're as ready as they can be when that time comes where they legally have to start school? So starting school is a huge deal and really, really stressful for adults and children alike. So the more we can ease the transition, the better that experience is going to be. So little things like every school has its own rhythm and routine. So yes, the start and finish times might be similar, but there might be different routines around break times. Some might have school dinners, some might have lunch boxes. So it's really important that you familiarize yourself with the rhythms and routine of the school so that you can then maybe start to introduce some of those rhythms and routines into your teaching practice or into your parenting. So you might align your break time and lunch time with those of the school so that your child's body, their physiology becomes used to eating at those certain times so they don't get too hungry. You might be talking about routines in the morning. So if you know your child's school start time is say 9 o'clock and it means you have to leave home at 8 o'clock or 8:30, then maybe you will start to have your morning routines match so that you're up, dressed and ready to go out at those times. This all can be done on the lead up to school, so their body clock or the physiology is not going to be shocked by the change of routine. So that's one way you can really support them. Then the next is knowing what happens at drop off and pick up. So children will often stress about what happens, where do I go, who do I go with, what happens when it's home time, who's going to pick me up, etc., etc. So that can be quite stressful. And stressful for parents too, getting their children to school on time, for one thing, can be a huge battle. So the more we can get into the rhythm of the school day, the easier that's going to be. So know what time the school starts so that you can settle your child in before the bell rings. The last thing on the first few days at school you want to be doing is literally running in late and feeling like the child's been thrown into the classroom. Knowing where to pick your child up from and what time, and being there before your child comes out can really support the child, because then they're not thinking you're not there and they're not getting stressed looking out for you. Once they're familiar, then it's not such a big deal, but until they become familiar and feel safe in that process, make sure you're there a few minutes earlier. Know how best to communicate to the teacher. The more you can have trusting relationships and open dialogue with the teacher, the better. But sometimes at a busy pickup time and drop off time, it's not the best time to be talking about your child's well-being. So I'm really sorry. So knowing when the best time to talk to the teacher, sorry about this, hold on a sec. So knowing when the best time to talk to the teacher is can really help both of you. So ask the teacher that in advance, and sometimes that can be, well, it's best if you send me a message and we arrange a time, or it's best if you click me an email, whatever that might be. Just know in advance, it will support you as well as your child. So it's really important to have at least 2 transition visits, at least. But be flexible. Your child might need more than that. The school might demand that you do more than that as well, because they have a lot of experience in new entrants and transitioning children. So keep that communication open with the new entrants teacher and be flexible around what time is needed, because children need to feel safe and secure in order to learn. And meeting the teacher is a very important first step, and it's only through those visits that you learn about the rhythms and the routines, etc., etc. So, and also, of course, becoming familiar with the environment. Little things can become a major stress for children, like where do I put my coat, or where does my bag go? What if I need the toilet? Who can help me? And where do we have lunch? So all of those things are really important to familiarise your child with in advance. And it's also comforting for you to know all of that, of course, too. So, of course, and lunchbox tips. We need to make sure our children aren't hungry. And it's so easy for a child who's feeling, not sure about this new environment, not confident enough to speak up and ask for help, not sure who to ask. or even if they know, they might not want to because they're in a hurry and want to go and play. But simple things like not being able to take the lid off the yogurt bottle can make the difference between them eating that yogurt and not. Not knowing how to open a packet can mean the difference between being able to eat it or not. Children do not always prioritize eating their lunch when they've got a whole bunch of friends to play with and they want to get out on the playground really quickly. So they might have the capability, but they might not have the patience. So be thinking about how you wrap the food so you make it really easy for children to access, and try and be consistent at least at the beginning. So even if it feels pretty samey, it doesn't matter. You're building your child's confidence and their ability to access their lunch quickly in a time where they might be feeling a little bit uncertain and insecure. Add variety a bit later. And if your child comes home hungry or with a full lunchbox, then make sure you speak to the teacher just to find out that, to make sure your child is being supported. Some of this are obvious, some of these tips are obvious, I know, but they're still important considerations. So common concerns again, you might have a will and make friends, being bullied, etc., etc. So if we understand that, we also know that similar concerns can overwhelm your child, can stress your child throughout the day. So even if the day is going well, they might be thinking, I don't know who to play with, or this friend won't play with me, or I don't know where to go, or I don't want to ask for the toilet. You know, it's all little things, but it's a big stress throughout the day. So that's very, very tiring for children as they get used to this new environment. So remember that starting school is a huge step, and it's very normal for children when they get home to have a very short fuse and be quite grumpy and less tolerant with their siblings, or less tolerant with you, or to easily go to overwhelm. So just be aware of that. They're not misbehaving, they're not being naughty. It's because they've been managing stress for the whole day and they're now coming home to you feeling safe and feeling like they can just release. So what looks like bad behaviour can just be overwhelm. So it's nothing that a bit of TLC can't cure. So be patient, expect to have behavioural challenges, and yeah, understand that it's just all part of the process. And in a few weeks, most children are settled really well and develop a love for school because they've had the best start. So that's it on presenting the slides, but I just want to come back to you guys and say, does anyone have any questions or comments around experiences you've had around transitioning to school, or tips that you might want to share with other participants around strategies that you can employ to support children?
Probably, I'll just share from my experience, Angie, and I'm sure a lot of the parents, or most of the parents here, know the challenges of prepping a child to school, especially if their class is early. So, one of the challenges that I'm facing is establishing a routine, like
Yeah,
waking them up early, especially the feeding part. Like
yes,
most kids or most children doesn't like um, being instructed to hurry up. You'll be late for school, and it's challenging for parents to make it fun, at least
yes.
preparing.
That's a really good point, Sam, and I remember that when my children were little as well. You know, some school mornings could be really stressful because children do not want to hurry. They don't, you know, they want to be playing at home, and they're in no rush to get themselves ready. So that's why it's really good to establish a routine early. So that's just the way we do things here. You know, they get up and get ready at that time every day. So be thinking about this not weeks before they start school, but even months, 6 months before they start school. How does our rhythm of the day fit with the school routine? Because if you're used to getting up as a family I don't know many families that do this, to be honest, but say as a family you're used to getting out of bed at 8:45. I bet you wish you had that chance, but say you did, then that would not fit with the school routine and rhythm. So to then expect your child to get up an hour and a half earlier to get ready for school is a big ask. So
True.
exaggerating a point to make a point, but you get what I mean. The more you can align those rhythms and rituals around the school day times, the easier then they'll be able to slot into the school rhythm. Janine, hi Janine. Janine says a practical consideration to consider is in the year your child's birthday is in terms of starting school. Yes, that's right, Janine. There's no point in starting early December for a few weeks, then not being able to use the ECE hours over Christmas. Janine, that's a really good point because some children might turn 5, say, in the November, and then you've got, say, 4 weeks left of the school year before we break up for the summer holidays. It seems crazy to start children in a new environment for 3 or 4 weeks when actually they could just wait until we go back to school in February, because that 3 or 4 weeks is not long enough to really settle in and be very comfortable, because it all seems different when you come back after the summer holidays anyway. So that's a really good point. Thanks, Janine. And parents often think, and some parents are under pressure as well to start children at school for many reasons. Some of them can even be financial reasons, like daycare, if you're working parents, is not cheap. Or going to a home-based educator, it costs, and it can put a lot of stress on families. But for the sake of a few weeks, it can really help your child if you delay that start date until the February. Or wherever country you're in, it could be a different summer holidays. But in New Zealand, the 6 week, 6, 7 weeks summer holidays start at the mid-December through to the end of January. So thinking about that timing, yeah, good point. Anything else? Anyone else have any tips?
I just want to ask some advice as well, because
Yeah,
some parents like me, I worry a lot about my child getting sick at school, and how to protect them, because sometimes, or most of the times, my child gets the flu or gets fever from her peers or colleagues at school. So yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean, there's not much you can do other than, creating a stress-free environment, having a good routine, good diet, the all that usual stuff. Um, Lots of fresh air to try and keep them as healthy as you can. But the reality is that children will pick up bugs because they're still building their immunity. Like adults have been exposed to many more germs over many years, so we have a pretty strong immunity, most of us, but children are still developing that. So it is natural that they'll pick up viruses and colds, etc. And there's not an awful lot you can do about that. Good point though, Sam. Also talking to the school about what they do. Do they finding out what they see as excludable illnesses? Like in early childhood, Ministry of Education have regulatory requirements around what illnesses children should not go to daycare. It will be the same in school or very similar. So being familiar with that can support you in making those decisions, because sometimes a child can be ill, say, when they come home from school today, and then tomorrow morning they can seem fine when they wake up. And you're thinking, well, do I send them to school or don't I? And you can make a decision, well, they seem fine, so I'll send them in. And guess what? Then you get a call from the school saying, hey, your child's sick, come and pick them up. So being aware of what illnesses are excludable and what ones aren't is a good first step. But there's not much you can do about the rest of it, other than have a plan in place. If my child's sent home, what do we do? Because they're with other people, lots of other people, and they are going to pick up viruses and colds.
Thanks, Angie. We have a question from Emma. She's worried about managing school holidays for working parents.
Yeah, that's tough. I don't know where you are, Emma, but there are some home-based providers who will provide Oscar care in New Zealand. So if it's definitely worth asking if you're in home-based, ask your visiting teacher if they know of any home-based educators who provide Oscar care. If you're in home-based, speak to your educator. They might be able to have your child over the school holidays. But then there's also out of school clubs and programs. So definitely Google, but best to really ask around and speak to people you know at the school and in daycare to see if they know more. So Ginny says, "Hi Ginny. Sometimes as a parent you can be more worried than the child actually is." That's so true, Ginny. Not passing on anxieties to your child is really important, as they may surprise you and settle in really fine. Absolutely, Ginny, that's the case. We acknowledge that it can be stressful for parents, but we have to be aware that if we show that stress, then we can pass it on to the child. Also, children can often feel it, so the more that you can reassure yourself, the better the whole transition will be. It's about transitioning you and your child, really. So if you're both involved in the process, you both get to know the teacher, you both get to know the routines, then you'll both feel comfortable. And if you're comfortable, your child will know. And similarly, if you're not, they might sense that too. So good point, Ginny. Good to be aware of that. And many schools have like parent committees, parent groups. If you're feeling like you need to know more and you're less comfortable, then get involved in the school. Schools normally welcome it. Not so easy as working parents, but there are still things you can get involved with. That might be weekend activities or volunteering at certain events, things like that. That will reassure you as well. All right, well, some good points. We're just 2 minutes over time, so not bad timing today, Sam. It's really great to see you, Janine and Ginny. I can't see who else is here, but if I've missed anyone, sorry. Hello, and thanks everybody for attending. And we'll see you at the next one. Now, our next webinar is going to be in January, and Nicole's here as well. Hi, Nicole. So if anybody has any concerns or requests about what we want to cover next year, then please just flick us an email. We're open to suggestion. And many children will start school in February. It's a common time for children to start, which is why we've timed this for the end of the year. So if your child is transitioning to school, I wish you both all the best of luck, and I'm sure it will be a very positive experience. Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening.